Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to see everybody here. My name is Eric Lyon, and I'm a professor of composition and creative music technologies in the School of Performing Arts at Virginia Tech. This event is sponsored by the School of Performing Arts with the support of VT Digging in the Crates, or VTDITC, the Virginia Tech student-led hip-hop studies organization. We also gratefully acknowledge support from the Bruce C. Carver Multicultural Arts Award. And today, we welcome A.D. Carson, a professor of hip hop in the Department of Music at UVA. Professor Carson will be joined by DeRay Manning, Evin Hill, Jonathan Kabongo, Jasmine Weiss, Craig Arthur, and Freddy Paige, all from the VTDITC community. And in this conversation, we're going to hear presentations of work both by Professor Carson and work that's been done in the VTDITC community, and conversations between Professor Carson and VTDITC. And finally, all the panelists will respond to selected questions from the audience. So I encourage audience members here to submit questions at any time during this session using the Q&A tool on Zoom. At this time, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the Tutelo-Monacan people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, and recognize their continuing connection to the land, water, and air that Virginia Tech consumes. We pay respect to the Tutelo-Monacan nations and to their elders past, present, and emerging. We also acknowledge that Virginia Tech's Blacksburg campus was previously the site of the Smithfield Plantation. At any point from 1774 to 1865, the Preston family enslaved 40 to 100 African men, women, and children on this land. We pay respect to those souls and acknowledge that Virginia Tech is undeniably tied to this legacy. And now, a conversation on the future of hip hop in the academy. Professor Carson, welcome to Virginia Tech. The floor is yours.
Peace, everybody. Eric, thanks for having me. And peace to all the students who are here, Dr. Paige, Craig, and everybody else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some slides and talk to you a little bit about these projects that I found myself working on coming into the academy, and then, you know, like what this might mean for what we are calling here today futures. And so maybe not the future, but, you know, some potential futures. And so again, thanks for having me. I appreciate the time and attention that is going into planning all of these things here. If you see the screen here, you'll see on the left side the cover of Owning My Master's album, and then on the right, the cover of I Used to Love to Dream. But I kind of want to go back to these projects that happened before I was before I went to Clemson. I was really trying to find a way. I mean, I love making music. I've been making music for as long as I can remember. So immediately previous to going to Clemson, I'd written this book called Cold. The book is out of print now. And what I also did was I wrote these mixtapes that I wanted to introduce the world to the world that's in the book. So the novel, I guess I called it a multimedia novel. It was poetry, prose, and lyrics. And well, I felt in a certain way that, and still feel in a lot of ways, that the book was a failure, not because it was not a book, but because I think that what I was trying to do is take what was happening in music and then put it into a more legible form for people to be able to consume it. And so, you know, like what I wrote in the text was that the aim was to write in hip hop. And so I was trying to do this from the vantage point of multiple narrative perspectives, multiple characters, you know, these personas. And even thinking about what's the difference between writing in first person or second person or third person. And as I left Illinois to go to South Carolina, then I started to think a little more critically about what that work was doing, using the music to be the way that I got to people, and then hopefully that would bring them along to some text, but then the text being the way that I made my way into an academy or into the academy, because, you know, of course it helps in your applications when you've, you know, written something like, you know, like this book. And so there is an album, an actual album that the book attempts to, I feel like the book is the liner notes to the album called Code. And then the Code World mixtapes introduce you to what's happening in Code. And so what I wrote in my dissertation project in the introduction was that if the aim was to write in hip hop, then this is another attempt, and consequently stands as evidence of the police body, the voice that comes from the body, resisting arrest and surveillance, making itself known as that upon which law is dependent. Now, that probably makes more sense in the larger context of the dissertation album. But here's kind of how I was thinking about this. And I was really looking at these binaries that are, that I drew from critical Black studies. This is, you know, like thinking about the embodied versus disembodied voice, reading someone like Alexander Wehelier, thinking about philosophy, the idea of phonocentrism versus logocentrism, you know, like the sounds versus the words. And then, you know, from musicology, drastic versus Gnostic, and then folding into that what I was calling rhetorics of rap, and really just like, well, what does it mean to perform? And then African-American literature and criticism. And so some of the key texts that I was looking at, particularly for hip hop, you see here. And so, you know, I'll just note that Trisha Rose's Black Noise is there. Also, shout out to Amani Perry's Prophets of the Hood, and the Gaines Black Girls Play by Dr. Gaunt. And I think that these are important books that folks should be reading as we are thinking through and about hip hop and hip hop studies and hip hop in the academy. But of course it says some, this is not all, it's not even meant to be comprehensive, but these were some that I held with me as I was thinking about the work I was doing at Clemson. But I think that I don't know that I privileged these texts over, you know, some of the folks that I was listening to. And really, you know, thinking about like the Sci-Hi, the Prince Black History Project. I mean, that was in heavy rotation when I was there, but we also have folks like Roxanne Shante. I know the Nipsey Hussle album like is after 2017, but that's, you know, that's a totally different thing. Eve as well. But anyhow, these are some of the things that that I was listening to. Also, shout out to Jean Grey over here. But after or as I was working on this, I was also reading Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. And this kind of stuck with me, this idea that you're constantly, I mean, this is a quote from the text, you're constantly being bumped against, or again, you often doubt you really exist. You wonder whether you aren't simply a phantom in other people's minds, say, a figure in a nightmare which the sleeper tries with all his strength to destroy. It's when you feel like this that out of resentment, you begin to bump people back. And the text goes on to say, I remember that I'm invisible and walk softly so as not to awaken the sleeping ones. Sometimes it's best not to awaken them. There are few things in the world as dangerous as sleepwalkers. I learned in time, though, that it is possible to carry on a fight against them without their realizing it. And I was thinking about Ellison while thinking with James Baldwin, and particularly the title of the text, you know, that comes from the hymn, God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time. And so there's this piece called Good Morning America that is part of the dissertation project, but it's also on volume 1 of the Sleepwalking series as a collaboration with some music from a friend of mine who I met here at UVA. That really kind of spoke to what it meant to create music in the context of being a doctoral student at Clemson. And again, I don't think that this is a new kind of rap music or a new kind of composition that's going on within hip hop. It just so happens that I'm a rapper who started graduate school and was working on a PhD. And these were the projects that I came up with. These were the things that were inspired by the time being there, reading in the classroom and experiencing all of the things that were going on outside of the classroom. And I think that one of those experiences, is a really important experience from that time is this right here. This was the second day of 9-day sit-in at Clemson in 2016. And myself and 4 undergraduate students were arrested and detained in the basement of this building. And this was about a year before I defended my dissertation, and Clemson put out its press release talking about my owning my master's album. And so if we talk about Virginia Tech as a former plantation, or we talk about the University of Virginia, we can add Clemson and lots of other universities to that. But also this resistance that you meet when you attempt to try to engage with the institution on those terms. So in this context, one could very easily state that the reason that I was arrested had everything to do with the work that I was doing at the university, which seems a little odd, but, it also maybe has to do with the ways that we interpret what that work is. And, well, how it gets done. And so, I was reading lots of different folks, but, this quote from Hortense Spiller's 94 essay called the Crisis of the Negro Intellectual Post-Date, it says that the Black creative, quote, the Black creative intellectual must get busy where here she is. There is no other work. If you've defined as an essential aspect of your personhood, the commitment to reading, writing, and teaching, it is performance that counts here, apparently, as we know Black musicians and remember them by the instruments of performance, and performance marks exactly the standard of work and evaluation that has not changed. And so moving forward, or I'm sorry, like moving along those lines, I guess I should just say that each semester that I was at Clemson, I recorded a collection of songs, and these were the mixtape essays that happened my first, second, through 6 semesters, and then owning my master's was put together from this archive of songs that I created. And so you can have access to that archive at, or you can access that archive at phd.adthegreat.com. None of this music is for sale. There's a link where I suppose if you are so inclined, you can donate at Bandcamp, but the whole idea is to make it accessible and make sure that people can get it. So you can also just put 0 in there and then download the music. And so then, there was this, while I was on the job market, there was this ad that came out for this job at UVA. It said, we're looking for an assistant professor of hip hop in the Global South. And I found myself saying to multiple people, that's not a thing. I am not going to apply to that because, who is UVA to have what they're calling a professor of hip hop? And I think I received very wise counsel from good mentors who said all of these issues that you have with that could be things that you might address. But the skepticism that I had when I was there still remains, even though I am the person who is in that job. And so the attempt now is to still think about these same questions and think about the context for creating music and to try to create a community where something like that can happen. And so this picture here is from, well, it's just middle of class. This is the composing mixtapes class. And the students are working on the individual parts of the collective project that they did each semester that this class meets. The students are tasked with writing an album together. And so there are generally 15 students that are in this class, and they're just working. And I, most of the time, just let them go and do what they're going to do. And we have conversations about, well, what it means to be creating. So I'm asking them the same questions that I was asking myself when I was creating at Clemson, now that we're here at UVA. And this is the second group. And, they got a nice little graffiti mural back here that it's been well supported by the university and different entities within the university and the Department of Music here at UVA. These are their projects. So the first group called themselves Extension 398 because the room number for the rap lab is 398. And they had some more extensive liner notes that you can find on their SoundCloud page. And then the second group, they called themselves I think that's Reclaiming Everyday Content, and their album was titled Cope. And then the group that started during the semester that the pandemic started named themselves After We All Went Home. And so they came up with ISO, which I believe stands for In Solidarity Online, because we were meeting together up until spring break. And then at spring break, we were told that we're not coming back. And it was a really tough semester for everyone, but this is also why you have the Zoom album cover. And they used the album release party as a way to do a fundraiser for local charity for people who were affected by the pandemic. And so as the students have been doing that work, and I've tried to bring the students into this practice that I engage in as an artist and as a scholar, I've continued with the Sleepwalking projects. And so Sleepwalking Volume 1 was released when I started my job here at UVA. And then Sleepwalking Volume 2 was about a year later. I guess I should note here that Sleepwalking Volume 2 was the project that I was really thinking about submitting to an academic press. And among others, I had a conversation with folks at Virginia Tech Publishing about putting this project out as an academic text or through an academic press. And then those conversations, halted rather suddenly. And I know that there are folks who are in the conversation that can maybe speak a little bit more to that, or speak to the suspicions about why that didn't happen. And of course, I'm open and receptive to that conversation. And then the Royale was I did sound design for this play that kind of takes its inspiration from the first chapter of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. And so the way that the people who put it together were thinking about sound design was in sort of a contemporary way. And so it was all music. Well, they used my music to for sound design for that play. And so I count that because it's kind of a different, putting the work into a different context, which also means that Sleepwalking Volume 3, or technically, I Used to Love to Dream is Sleepwalking Volume 3, and that is the project that I've most recently released with the University of Michigan Press, and submitted it to this peer review process, and learned quite a bit about academic publishing, but also about what we might consider, in this conversation about the futures of hip hop in the academy and what things might happen next. I would say that most of the feedback and engagement that I've had with the project has been positive, but it hasn't been, I don't want to paint this picture like it's been an easy thing to do. I think that it can be jarring for folks to have a rap album presented to them as, a so-called academic text. So then folks are like, well, what am I even supposed to do with this? And so that's, I don't know, that has been a challenge. And so I'm happy that, this past couple of weeks, folks have been talking a little bit more about the album, especially since I, wrote this essay about what the album means and what I was aiming to do, putting it out, especially putting it out with an academic press. And so I think that that's the gist of the work that's going on here, or at least a very abbreviated, version of the timeline, with my work that deals most directly with this project and what's happening right now, and also hopefully speaks just a little bit to the interaction that I've had with Freddie and Craig and the folks at Virginia Tech, because this conversation that we're having now was inspired by one of those conversations that Freddie invited me down for with Digging in the Crates. And then Eric and I started having a conversation about what it might look like for there to be a professor of hip hop in other music departments across the country. And while I'm not hopeful that that's something that is going to happen really soon, I do, agree with the sentiment that we should have more professors of hip hop, or folks who whose work looks like this, and is brought into the academy so that folks aren't having to do the double work of making the music they make and then writing about the music or writing about something else, unless they choose to do those things. And so it's an exciting time. It's a very interesting time, but it's also kind of scary, especially as this clock is chasing some of us who are having to think about what tenure looks like, or like what that process is going to look like. So I think that, I could go on, but I won't, because I think that I want to hear from other people and get to the questions that people might have. But I appreciate y'all's time, and please hit me with the questions, whichever ones you have.
Appreciate that, Dr. Carson. I think the way this is set up, there's a lot of questions already flowing into the Q&A section and in the chat. But we're going to hold some of those questions to the community portion at the end. We're going to start off with just a little conversation between me, you, and Jonathan Kabongo, who's here. And we'll try to hold this to 9 or 10 minutes for the folks who are waiting. We're promise you we're going to get to you. This is going to be an interactive and fun conversation. And first, I would like to bring up one of the things I wanted to ask you last. Which is can you maybe talk about some of the potential benefits you foresee that may come with getting this tenure, after the clock is up, right?
Yeah. The potential benefits of tenure?
Yeah.
Well, maybe besides the very obvious ones, like a job, like this, whatever, stability, security, or whatever. I think it's just advocating for, doing more advocating for the work and feeling less worried about you do a project and then there's absolute silence. And I imagine that might be the case with a lot of folks. You do a thing and folks talk about it for a little bit, then you move on to the next thing. But the worry that you have that folks don't know what it is, or that folks can't hear it. They don't, they understand that it's an album, but they don't know what the content is. They don't know what the contribution is. They don't even know why you would insist to do this as opposed to doing a traditional book. And so this question that I get asked all the time, I want to be charitable. I want to be generous and be I know that that's coming from a good place. But somebody's well, but can you rap, or can you write traditional prose? And it's damn, that's a bad question. It's not a bad, it's a bad question, but it's a bad question for so many reasons.
Yeah.
And one of them is how I got into this work. And so, this is also maybe the reason that I say that when I wrote the book, or the previous book, I wrote it and thought that it failed at doing the work that I wanted to do. And that's the reason that the next project isn't a book. And so if your question is, can I write another book? That's a different question than can you write?
Yeah.
Or can you write prose? And of course, that book is not, what we would typically call an academic book, but it still raises these same questions. So the hope would be that you could take more, or that I might be able to take more risks in the work, and do it without having to spend so much time explaining what it is or what it means, or explaining to people why it's situated in the way that it is. And again, I know that that's difficult, because you're asking people to literally think in ways that they haven't about this thing that exists in their mind, but it's on the outskirts of what they think is is important work. And because it's on the outskirts, it's unimportant, and they never see it unless they're traveling the scenic route. And I need for it to be the main thoroughfare for some folks.
Yeah.
So that, I think that is a benefit, but then also having students who might want to do that kind of work, and providing space for people who, who might not have had access to these spaces, wanted to come into the space, but didn't have access previously. And so more than anything for me, I think it's about the folks who come later, who come next, and making sure that kind of space is made available for folk.
Yes. That brings up, set of bars that I'm not even going to try to emulate your style. What I'm saying?
I appreciate
There's no point in even doing that. But in asterisk, you say, is it really a win if your team ain't there? It ain't enough to just be living. And I think that's pretty clear in terms of your response. It's again, you're pretty isolated, the professor of hip hop right now. A lot of folks talk about the things you've done first, which is, sometimes debatable or whatever. And then thinking about the concept of tenure, right?
Yeah.
Being there, allegedly a job for forever, right? And allowing yourself the time to help other folks access this space. I think that's really important and critical. So, John, do you want to?
Yeah, and honestly, kind of to speak along those same lines, like in ampersand, you say, the thing they call success is real elusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I want to know like how success is defined by somebody that's a hip hop professor, to somebody that has the peer reviewed album, right? Like, what does success even mean at this point?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that, because, like in a lot of ways, like this is a thing, like when you, this is why I say an asterisk, an asterisk I'll add to all my losses, is because, like there's a certain way that doing this way is also an L. And so like the asterisk is that, well, this is the way that I do this job. You know what I mean? Like this is how I'm going to be able to make it through to the thing in this context that might be viewed as success, but that might alienate me from the people that I fuck with regularly, or the people that I'm closest to. Because, like in a certain sense, I remember one of my brothers was like, one of my younger brothers was like, this is not that, like this is not that old shit you used to do. And I'm like, yeah, it ain't, but it's something else. And he's like, yeah, I get you got to do that thing for them people over there. And I'm like, but I'm not doing that for them. But like that's the kind of thing that might live in my head,
Right.
and it might stay there when I'm writing the next thing, because it's like, okay, like you ain't no more.
Right.
Like the stuff that you got going on over here at UVA is affecting your ability to write in that pocket that you normally write in.
Right.
And so, I mean, I hope that when folks listen to the music, they hear like that's a struggle, but I don't think that it compromises my ability to be honest about the parts of it that I need to be honest about. But that's also a thing that I won't be able, to judge right now. I feel like it has integrity, like I wouldn't want the album out. I wouldn't even be talking to y'all about the album if I thought it was trash, or, if I thought that it didn't do what I needed for it to do. But there, like, I don't know, I might not feel that way tomorrow. And so, I mean, I felt worse, like the first couple of years when I didn't know what I wanted to do, or I didn't even know what the work was. It's just like, I want to keep my job because I want to stay in the house that I stay in, and I want to be able to pay my bills. And now I feel, I mean, like when the thing happened with Sleepwalking 2, and then it's like, yo, so I've talked to multiple people, and I just don't think these folks get what I'm trying to do. As much as I try to explain what I'm doing, somebody's like, I mean, not even asking a question. It's like, well, there's a song on the album called Kill Whitey, but nobody called me up and was like, hey, so what is this song doing? And it might be problematic for us or whatever. No, I never had that. I had that conversation. Again, like these were suspicions, but nobody told me that. But you can imagine the number of points of contention that people might have over things that they might present, that folks will feel comfortable saying, what is this? Or can you explain this a little bit more? But to just drop off and not talk to a person. So I'm like, well, I guess I just got to put it on Bandcamp, or I got to put it on SoundCloud. But is Bandcamp or SoundCloud going to be legible to my department and to my college and to my university when I say, here's the work that I've done since I've been here? And I know that work is making, I hope that work is making the kind of impact that it should be out in these other spaces. So folks who I want to reach are being reached by it, I believe. But the folks who I need to reach in order to, like occupy this position are like, no, we would love for you to write a book about the history of hip hop. And I'm like, well, no.
I think it's interesting that you say that because, this project is focused on the idea of home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's about staying true to your roots. So it's like, how do you find yourself staying connected to the streets and, still being in an academic space and, just navigating both spaces while, staying true to yourself? Like, how does that even work for AD?
Well, that's like asking the ampersand, is it more E or T? Like, I mean, I think that it's, it's both, like the idea of, like, and like the togetherness. It's not like this one or the other, or I mean, it seems absurd in a certain way to think about myself as like being connected to the streets or any streets. And that's not to say that that's not a thing I might have said at some point in my life. The reason that it seems absurd is because of this distance that you might have from that. So again, like when I'm talking to folks at home and they might hear something, and or not just folks at home, folks from any place where they hear the work and it resonates with them in a certain way, then I'm like, okay, it's still connecting in the way that I want to. Or like someone, you know, like one of my academic friends, you know, is like, I heard that line, like, you know, is that a play on, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, that's good that you got that. And then I realized that I'm connecting there. It's the hope. The hope is that you continue to do what you feel is the work that you should be doing, rather than like having to choose one or the other, or like one place or the other place. You know what I'm saying?
So I think you definitely mastered some of these processes, right? And I definitely call you a lot to try to figure out certain things for my own career as well. And something I wanted to kind of extend from that question is in the book Black Power by DeRay and Hamilton, they talk about a shift in strategy to oppress Black people from forcing labor, like you got to do this work to get paid, to overall dependency. And, you know, as a professor, I can definitely see a certain dependency structure that gets set up for me to have certain currencies or do certain things that get me to tenure.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that process to make sure that you're independent, but you're not so independent you're no longer a part of the system?
Well, I mean, I think that part of this has to, you know, like in a real way, it should be noted that like this kind of infrastructure that exists here in my position, in my department, that there has been this support. You know, when I say what I said about UVA, I mean about that job posting that came up, that was before meeting any of the people at UVA. But when I got here and then I asked, well, what does this job mean? Folks were like, well, we're going to create that, rather than saying this is what it's supposed to be. And so I was never put in a position by my colleagues here, like where they told me what I have to do. And, you know, to be honest, there are times when I might have wanted to play things a little more conservatively. And then folks in the department were like, you should do the work that you're doing. And then we'll figure out how to articulate it, rather than you should do like this other kind of thing. And you know, like sort of like take the easy route, and then have to like sort of be dishonest about the work that you are doing. So I think that's important, is that even if folks don't understand the intricacies of what might be happening within the work, there is general support for the work being done, and having conversations about what that looks like, and then also having conversations about what the student body looks like. And so that's a conversation that happens here and has been happening here consistently, even when sometimes it's awkward. For myself and for my own work, it's to always consistently challenge myself to hold myself accountable in that same way, so that I'm not trying to back off of something that I want to say or something that I want to do because I think that this is going to be easier. And that's, I don't know, it's difficult. And also to like make sure that I'm not, that power dynamic is not something that I'm trying to hold students that I work with to, you know, so that I'm not reproducing that kind of thing whenever I have when I'm in relationship to students or other scholars, where it's like you're dependent upon me in order for you to do the kind of thing that you're doing. Or if you don't do a thing, if you don't call it a mixtape essay, or if you don't whatever, then it's not real or it's not good, because I don't think that that's healthy either. So it's always having to check myself in the process. Because I mean, I know I'm stubborn enough to like move forward and do the things that I do the way that I want to do it. But I might unintentionally, like my stubbornness might come across as like bullying somebody else if I have the power to do that. And so I got to constantly check myself about that.
I definitely think you check yourself pretty well. You got a set of bars in Framing Pain where you talk about, I'd rather stay and laugh than leave and sob. I'd rather break the whole machine than try to limit me and be a cog.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely evident in the actions I've seen you take as an individual, right? Or as a scholar, as a person. John, do you have any other questions you want to ask?
I actually want to talk about Framing Pain for a little bit. And I want to talk about how you say you don't like talking about making it out of unimaginable trauma.
Yeah.
And what I like about that is in the next song, you start with saying, where I'm from, the celebrations are devastating. And I'm like, okay, how do those contradictions work together? Because later in the song, you're like, the paradox is apparent. And I'm like, okay, how is it apparent? You know,
Yeah.
like, why, how do these things work together, AD?
Yeah, well, because I mean, I think that we're free to disagree with something that we said previously, even if it was just a minute ago. You know what I mean? Like some days I feel like I don't want to talk about this shit, and then other days it's the only thing that I want to talk about. You know what I mean? Like, and I am free to change. I think that we all should be more free, you know, feel more free to change, and you know, like sort of on and that's, I mean, it's really how I was feeling when I was writing the album. So you know, it's the thing that it's all like as I mean, you know, as Jonathan, as a rapper, you know, and somebody like you walk up and somebody's like, oh well, you're an MC, or you know, as a player, you know, a guy who hoops, you know, somebody is like, well, Jonathan, you rap for us, and it's like, what? No, like that's weird. That's weird that you would ask me to do that right here, right now. And then there are other moments where you seek out an opportunity where somebody mentions rap, and then you're like, whoever said it, they gonna get these bars. You know what I mean? Like you feel free, like situationally, to approach those situations the way that you want to approach them. And so somebody might say you never perform, and somebody else might know you and say you are always performing. And I think that you can hold both of those at the same time, because some of the ways that people, I mean, the ways that you might be asked to present these things, or the ways that you might be tasked with presenting these things, means that you say, I absolutely won't do that. And then others, you know, you're like, I absolutely always will do that. And so, yeah, and so it's going to come across in the music where it seems like I'm just like I'm lying. And I'm not. I feel like I told the truth in all of those instances, even when it seems inconsistent with the thing that I said next.
That's super dope. Yeah, definitely appreciate all these responses. John, appreciate the help with the questions. We definitely want to share this conversation with everybody, so we're going to stay on time. I'll end it just for other folks who are interested. You know, please check out the album if you haven't. You know, and Ampersand AD talks about this whole phenomenon here. Like, yet here I am, narrator, illustrator, pro and antagonist. You'll see the difference later if you wait to hear me out. And it's like, when I heard, I was like, oh, here we go. I guess turn off all the lights. Let's just have a moment with the music. I don't want to talk to nobody. So definitely check it out. And at this point in time, I want to shift over to Jasmine Weiss, who will start to bring up the conversation of Virginia Tech digging in the crates to expand this panel.
Thank you, Freddie, and thank you, AD, on explaining some of your art. So briefly, digging in the crates, what does it mean? So digging in the crates is a term that describes the archival research process that DJs and music producers go through. And digging in the crates attempts to honor hip hop arts and practitioners by naming our community digging in the crates. Our first meeting took place December 9th in 2016 at the University Library's Media Design Studio B, which is currently where we have our studio hours every Friday. From the very beginning, Digging the Crates has been a student-led organization, and that included 12 people attending the first meeting, 8 students and 4 faculty members. The students included Eric Liu with Flomigos, which is the VT Breaking Club, Megan Nguyen, the LGBTQ+ Resource Center, Jocelyn Akiapong, Dylan Holiday, Nahom Kase, and Rahika Shawarma with Students of Hip Hop Legacy or Soul, Andrew Barber with WVT 90.7 FM, and Calvin Huang at VT Expressions. And the faculty members that attended that first original meeting were Craig Arthur, associated with University Libraries, Dr. Kwame Harrison, who's associated with the Department of Sociology and the Africana Studies program, Dr. Freddy Paige, who's with us today as well, with the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and lastly, Kimberly Williams, who's connected with the Black Cultural Center on campus. Digging in the Crates community is unique because we are made up of a wide variety of disciplines. As you just heard, we're mixed up with the Department of Sociology, with the libraries, with the engineering program, and with cultural centers on campus, which is one aspect I really like about digging in the crates. We are also made up of different organizations on campus and off campus, as I briefly talked about earlier, the LGBTQ Resource Center, university libraries, VT Engage, Student Opportunities and Achievement Resources, and the Gloria D. Smith Professorship in Africana Studies. And a couple of the community organizations that we have the pleasure of working with is the Boys and Girls Club of Southwestern Virginia and the Harrison Museum of African American Culture, located in Roanoke. So working with those organizations, Digging in the Crates has had over 400 events over the past 5 years. And this infographic created by our program director, Craig Arthur, displays our 2018-2019 annual report of all those great programs that we were able to do throughout the years of our organization. All of these elements of Digging in the Crates help teach credit-bearing curriculum. And one of the aspects of our program are a monthly seminar series, which I had the pleasure and opportunity to plan and invite a guest speaker last month. And we're now on our volume 27, which is upcoming next month. And we've also had more than 100 media literacy workshops. I've had the pleasure of working with the Boys and Girls Club, Roanoke Public Libraries, and the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Tau Mu Omega chapter with the STEM camp. And the last element of Digging in the Crates that makes us unique is our studio hours, which is an opportunity to expand our community by offering free music studio hours to students on campus and our local community. Every Friday afternoon in Newman Library Media Design Studio B, we offer these hours, and it started in spring 2018. Again, an opportunity to meet with our community. Through that aspect of Digging in the Crates, we've released the BCC mixtape, which was a collaborative project with the Black Cultural Center and Digging in the Crates. And we're currently working on our 5th anniversary mixtape, which John, Evin, and DeRay are also part of. And the studio hours are hosted by our community engagement fellows, which I'm a community engagement fellow, and all the other students on the panel today are community engagement fellows. And through this fellowship, we have opportunity to work with other hip hop practitioners. We've had the opportunity to be on this panel and work with AD. And DeRay is going to talk to us about his work with former community engagement fellow David Kim.
So hello, everyone. Thank you, Jasmine. I'm DeRay Manning. I'm the lead technical director of Virginia Tech Digging in the Crates. And today I'll be discussing with you my experience being the lead technical director, as well as, what led to being in this position. So before joining Virginia Tech Digging in the Crates, I've always been a hip hop artist. I've been rapping since I was 7, and leading up to going to Virginia Tech, I started taking music very seriously in middle school and high school. So coming to Virginia Tech, I was automatically just looking for a hip hop community. And ironically, one day I was going to Media Design Studio B to record with a friend at the time. And that's where I met Virginia Tech Digging in the Crates alum, David Kim. And at the time, he wasn't working for Digging in the Crates, but over time, we developed the artist and producer relationship because he loved to make beats, but he was also the engineer that was employed in the library at the time. So as we was creating music together, we was able to create my first project, Suburbia, in Media Design Studio B, in which we had a listening party for it. And as we was just spending time recording together, I started going into studio hours, which is where I met Craig and Freddy, and I was able to get involved on the BCC mixtape, which I was able to submit at least 2 or 3 songs to be a part of the hip hop community. And through engaging in studio hours, I was able to come across even more artists such as Evin and John. And now we're all working today trying to push, community, trying to push the community and also together promoting hip hop. So through my experience as lead technical director, I was able in high school, I was able to get an audio engineering certificate from Recording Connection. And so coming into this position, I was working with David. He was the original lead technical director, and following behind him, I was able to expand on my knowledge of Pro Tools as well as learning how to set up live sound and learning how to pretty much strip down the equipment at the end of the events. And through that time, I was able to expand upon my ear, learn how to work with artists better directly, and not only become a better audio engineer working with Pro Tools and recording artists during studio hours, but also becoming a better artist myself through working with amazing artists such as John and Evin. So overall, I know we're discussing the future of hip hop and the academy, and I just like to say, moving on to the future, I would just love for Virginia Tech Digging in the Crates to expand and hopefully a partnership with SOPA in which we could start to establish, collabs with our artists, with a few of the, musicians over in SOPA. I think it will be a beautiful thing. And yeah, thank you, AD, for presenting today.
Thank you, DeRay. So going off of that, expanding our Digging in the Crates community with SOPA, we've definitely had a pleasure of starting that connection between the two organizations. And I'm going to briefly talk about my personal experience with Digging in the Crates and how I was able to join the team. So originally I came to campus and I, like DeRay, was looking for a community. And I honestly struggled finding a community that I could connect with. And then I came across Digging in the Crates. I came to one of the seminar series, and I honestly fell in love with the energy of the community. And they offered positions, and I was hired as a technical assistant. So I originally came on and assisting DeRay and DK, setting up our live events, where I had the pleasure of learning about layouts and lighting and setting up DJ equipment and all these different wires that are important to really make sure that everything sounds right. So I've learned like so much just with that specific element of Digging in the Crates. And as I continued with the team, I created a strong bond with LaPortia, who is our current community engagement program specialist and was formerly our creative director, which is my position now. And with that connection, I started coming to our studio hours, where I also had the pleasure of learning about music engineering, briefly learning about Pro Tools, learning about interacting with other artists, and networking, and learning how to create a mixtape, which is a very intricate process, and applaud you, AD, for creating several pieces. As I had mentioned earlier, we're currently on our 5th anniversary mixtape, and I have the pleasure of learning about metadata and collecting information as far as mixtape. And this year as creative director, I've had the opportunity to create a website for Digging in the Crates. I've learned about hiring practices within the university, which is very interesting, and participated in the peer review process and was able to collaborate on a published article about hip hop and Digging in the Crates program. But overall, I get a sense of community I couldn't find anywhere else on campus. And I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to work with others to create art, which we label as scholarship as well. And John Kabongo is about to talk about his experience with hip hop as scholarship.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I came in with a deep passion for music, for rap music, and I was just looking for community. I mean, it took a while for me to kind of get in contact with people or come in contact with people that were involved in Digging in the Crates. But once I did, and once I got into that studio hours environment, I was like, whoa, this is what I want to do in college. These are the type of environments I want to be in. I want to be able to rap, freestyle, have 6 producers in the studio playing their beats, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to pick. I feel like those are the opportunities that all rappers dream of, and I don't think academic space is a space where that can't happen. And it definitely helped me just build relationships outside of just the music as well. You have these people that you meet that have their own stories, that have their own lives, and like you hear it through their music, and you hear it in conversation when we're just talking in between sessions, and we're like, okay, where are you from, like what's your life like, and a lot of these things just go beyond music, and that's what hip hop is about, right? A lot of us listen to hip hop for entertainment, but a lot of the times it's also to hear the stories of these people that come from places that we probably don't come from, that have experiences that we don't have or that we never had. And, you know, just kind of fast forwarding to now, like I've been involved with Digging in the Crates. This is my 3rd year. This is my 1st year actually being on the team, you know, and as I'm recording my first album in the studio, in Studio B, and my new album, I'm just grateful to have, you know, people like, you know, DeRay, Evin, Jasmine, and everybody else telling me, oh, I like this or I like that, you know, and having the opportunity to just know I have a place to record, you know, and not worry about like, okay, am I going to be able to finish this project? Do I have somewhere to record? Do I have someone to record me? Do I have producers to connect with? And you know, I definitely see how this could definitely progress later, being somebody that's going to be doing a master's in English here at Tech. You know, I definitely spoke to a lot of the people that are going to be involved about incorporating music in my thesis, and I have the resources to do that. And I would love to see the music department, you know, provide more resources, because I feel like it could only grow, and I could only imagine, you know, the things that I would be, you know, provided with if there was a lot more unity between Digging in the Crates and the music department here at Virginia Tech. So that's all I'm gonna say for now, or that's it, period. And yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how this grows. Pass it to my man, Evin.
Yeah. So yeah, my name's Evin. I'm a senior in aerospace engineering. And my journey kind of started back in fall 2018 with the meeting for the BCC mixtape. Virginia Tech, Digging in the Crates, and the Black Cultural Center were looking for rappers and producers and singers to get involved with this mixtape they were trying to create. And I was new on campus at the time, so I was just kind of looking to connect. And I've been making beats for several years, but mostly in isolation. And I never really played my music for anybody before outside of making CDs for my mom. So yeah, I was looking to for the opportunity to expand and just have people hear my music. So the first time this actually happened was in October that semester at the Beat Battle. And like I said, this is my first time ever playing music for anybody like in that kind of setting. And I was pretty nervous about it, but I came in with the idea in my head that I just want to make it out of the first round. Now, unfortunately, I did not make it out of the first round, but there were still people that told me my stuff was dope. And it was cool to just kind of get over that hump and fear of like putting myself out there, right? So I just kept rocking with the crew, putting in work on the mixtape, and attending the studio hour sessions every week and watching how this whole process kind of came together. And everybody in the crew was just really down to earth, very easy to talk to. We obviously had similar interests. So this was like really I've heard, we've all said this already, but this is like my first experience with community at Virginia Tech. So yeah, throughout this process, I started to become a regular at studio hours, and it kind of became the thing that I looked forward to throughout the week. And just being around these creators and different artists, it kind of just helped me to really want to hone my craft and get better. So after my first year here, I spent that summer just making beats, constantly getting better. I kind of flipped my style into a new sample-based type of production, which really took my stuff to the next level. And so I came into the beat battle the next year with the mentality that I'm going to win this. And just it happened. I actually won that year. And it was really just cool to see my work and like just being in this community and the growth that it provided me kind of like come to fruition. And bouncing off that beat battle, I was actually able to perform in front of a live audience at downtown Blacksburg for the first time at the Milk Parlor. I did that 2 times before the pandemic hit. So I'm really itching to get back out there whenever outside opens up again. But now flash forward to 2021, I was offered the opportunity to become a community engagement fellow. And this is helping me grow in even more different ways. For example, this panel, like even like 2 months ago, I never would have even imagined myself doing something like this. I'm kind of an introverted person. Like I kind of keep to myself. So these kind of opportunities have really just got me to step out of my comfort zone. And so this semester, I'm actually, instead of participating in the beat battle, I'm actually planning it and hosting it on April 22nd at 7 p.m. So if you guys are available, definitely come out. So, and on top of that, like in the studio hours, now I'm actually doing a lot of the recording engineering and tracking the artists as they record. So I'm providing feedback to them as they work on their projects and just trying to help them get better, and it's making me better at the same time. And I've also been able to use the studio hours to work on my own personal project where I'm actually rapping and it's not just beats, which it's been a long path for me to get from the point where I was like just making beats to being comfortable on the mic, because it was always kind of a low-key dream in the back of my head just to actually make an album where I had the beats and I'm rapping on it. And so I really feel like this organization has gotten me to the point where I can actually do something like that, like, because the process has been really back and forth, but now I feel like I'm closer than ever. So yeah, along with that, yeah, I just feel like the organization has really just helped me build my own self-confidence and just become a better version of myself.
So I guess we got the video next.
Yeah.
Can I say shout out to LaPortia, because she I don't know if you all know that the picture that I showed initially, LaPortia is in that picture because she was a student at Clemson when I was there. That was her first year at Clemson. And then when I was here, she went to Virginia Tech. So it's community all through Virginia.
My name is Evan. I go by Prince Predator. I'm a senior in aerospace engineering, and I make beats for fun.
My name is Jonathan Kabongo. I am a senior creative writing major. I'm also a rap artist. I definitely learned to appreciate the art of literature and writing through rap music.
Music to me is freedom. It's creativity. It's doing things my way.
I write about my life and what I like to consume my mind with.
One of the key things in my process is sampling. I listen to the entire song and I start to chop the song up and pull out parts of it that are sonically interesting to me. It's taking a song that already exists and taking elements of it and incorporating a new song or your own creation to create something entirely new. Now, this particular song is called Mysterious Vibes. It's by the Blackbirds.
I already knew the song, like the sample, right? He sends me a file and I see Mysterious Vibes. I'm like, did he sample Mysterious Vibes? So I click it and I hear the sample and I'm like, okay, let me restart. Like, let me brace myself.
I heard it and immediately I wanted to sample it. I went and downloaded the song and just started chopping it up and creating. Somebody told me that only you can do what you do. Like, nobody else is gonna chop that up the same way I do it.
So this is FL Studio. It's a digital audio workstation. For this song, the backbone of it is this chop right here. So one of the first things I did was I pitched it down a whole step just to make it sound darker. Then after that, I actually reversed it to make it sound even more interesting. Then after that, I still wasn't satisfied, so I kind of created my own melody. It sounds like this.
I've heard people sample it before, and you know, people have done a great job sampling it. But the way he sampled it and the way he added his own type of flavor to it, it just shocked me, to be honest. Like, I couldn't believe it. The lyrics were just coming. From there, I kind of just meditated on it for the rest of the week, and I said, Evan, look, like, we got to do this. We got to record. This is fire.
Yeah. Good?
Look, listen. Mysterious vibes, mysterious times. All my close friends suffering, pretending they fine. I'm just like everybody else, but I'm still one of a kind. They can't look you in the eye, and that's just one of the signs. They ain't really, they got something to hide. Let me not assume it's possible the person just shy, but then the question is why.
The title Mysterious Vibes spoke to this time that we're in right now so much that I didn't want to change the name. it feels like the second verse is seeing the news and then being able to walk inside the screen. There's polarization, contradiction, and paradoxes with everything that's going on, from the pandemic to the summer that we had with, you know, police killings and all sorts of things. So it's like, I definitely feel like that's what that song embodies. This mysterious aspect of life that you can't really explain, but makes sense, and that's very universal to everybody. It just feels like sometimes like we can be a walking contradiction. Things don't work together, and that's how it's supposed to be. Life just doesn't make sense, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I know the truth ain't based on how I feel.
Guess everybody's speechless, huh?
Definitely letting that breathe. Super dope work. I really enjoy when the students are able to just take control of certain situations, in terms of the creation of the videos, the creation of the music, because you really don't know what you're gonna get, and we work really hard as a community to make sure that we empower and resource students to do these things. So just to be clear, when you guys look at that long list of achievements and stuff, it's like, nah, the faculty involved in digging in the crates create the platform, and then the students do the work, right? And they steer it. And honestly, they're at the point where they create the platform. So Dr. Carson talked about LaPortia Perkins. You know, she came back to after she graduated to continue helping us build this platform and make sure that this community stays strong and connected. And you know, without the work that she contributes, like, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do. So I just want to make sure everybody in the audience understands that, like, this isn't something that you can hire a faculty member to do and they're just going to do it by themselves. Like, it really requires this community and as Dr. Carson highlighted, that support, making sure that folks are provided the resources and the support that is needed to do certain things.
Yes.
So are we, Jasmine, are we at the community Q&A at this point in time?
Yeah, I know that John still has some good questions, and Evin and DeRay, we all have some questions for AD. You guys can go ahead. John, did you want to start with one of your questions?
I could start. You know, in the interview, you say how, you know, when you're writing, it's your way of feeling your way through new spaces.
Yeah.
So how has the space of academia, like, affected the way you write, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, it's weird, you know. I just think that, you know, sometimes, you know, a really long time ago, it's just different because I remember at some point, I remember wanting everybody to get everything that I said, you know, like, it's like, I want to prove to you that I'm clever in these particular ways. And I remember one time, you know, it was a guy who I knew, you know, is an older dude who was just like an incredibly talented rapper. And so I wanted to impress him, so I'm rapping. And then, like, every time after the verse, I stop and I'm like, did you catch that? Here's what I was doing here. And, you know, he stopped me and he was like, yo, like, if it's dope, I get it. And I mean, he's like, you know, like, not necessarily understand it, but, you know, like, at some point, you know, like, it's going to resonate. And it seems like that's kind of like the opposite of what happens here, is that, you know, because if folks, like, the expectation that folks will get it or folks will live with it for long enough to, you know, like, for it to, like, get to them, I don't know, like, I can't assume that that's what folks are, you know, that folks are going to do. That, like, sometimes a person might listen to it one time, give it a chance, or they come in, you know, with these ideas about what it's already going to be, And if they don't get it, or if they don't like it the first time, then they move on. And it's not that I'm so worried, or that I'm like stuck on being worried about that, but it means so much that folks are able to do something with it. So I don't know, it's made me more deliberate, but I don't think that it's really changed the process. Again, like I want to be more adventurous. I want to take more chances. I know that, some of these things are going to fail. Sometimes you're going to try a concept out and you will fail spectacularly. My hope is that when that happens, I'm learning something from it. But I don't want to be so scared to try something that I don't do it. And so that's the thing that, again, like that I want to challenge myself, is to just keep taking chances. And, like if there's a dope opportunity, where there, like it might be a collaboration, I've had some really cool collaborations with folks, folks from UVA or folks in the community here. And I'm glad that I was receptive to those, even as everything felt really, like in certain ways alienating and isolating, that those collaborations were there, because some of them felt awkward and didn't feel like they were going to be, I don't know, like I didn't know what they were going to be, but to move forward and just like try it out and see what happens, that's kind of dope.
Definitely. Going off of John's, I know we were just talking about how processes aren't too different as far as bringing music to the academy. But I know that we were talking earlier about how within the creation of mixtapes, the hip hop community essentially goes through their own peer review process, as John was talking about, getting feedback from Evin, DeRay, and I in studio hours and other community members on his music. So essentially that is like a peer review process. So my question to you is, how would you explain the similarities between the academic peer review and what we also claim as peer review?
Yeah, and I've said this before. There was a point that I was that I was having this conversation, I think, with Freddie, is that I don't know that there's much writing that we have, that we find in public spaces, or that we, like that is published anywhere, that isn't reviewed by somebody, or that there isn't feedback given on it. And so, like there's I guess the argument could be made that most of the writing that you read is peer reviewed in that way as well. But that's not the conversation that we're having when something goes through the academic peer review. So I think that the thing that people are saying when they say that all rap music is peer reviewed, like gets to who the peers are. Like it's kind of asking the question, who are the peers? But then we also have to think that there are processes with artists where the person who's reviewing the music is not an artist, and their feedback is not valuable to the artist, is valuable to the record company. And so your album is not going to come out because somebody believes that you don't have a single. And so I don't know if we call that peer review as well, or what we call that. So there are these review processes that exist. And I know somebody mentioned that a cipher is kind of like a peer review. I think that we all go through processes where we might have, like we consult with other people around the creative stuff that we're going to put into the world. I think that the academic peer review process is its own thing. And to say that that rap already has its version of that, I don't think that that's necessarily like, I don't think that that's as honest as we would like for it to be. There are these kind of processes that do exist. And like, let's also be very clear that I go through that process all the time. Like there was no way that I was putting out Sleepwalking 2 without consulting with a whole lot of people before, like I decided to title that song, that one song, but like the whole project, what it was, and then get some feedback from people. But that's not the same kind of thing that I did with the University of Michigan Press. It's an entirely different thing. But like when I tried to go through that process with, like the Virginia Tech folks, it stopped. And the reason that it stopped, I think, was because of a lack of understanding of what the content might be. And so, I don't know if that's like really an answer so much as it's kind of an explanation of the thinking around it, because like I totally understand that most rappers will resist that, but I think that that's just like maybe a resistance to what seems like colonization of another Black cultural product. And I am totally with resisting that as well. Like we need to resist that so that we don't have this issue where like other you know, musical forms, other Black musical forms, it seems like you have to go and sign up for classes in somebody's music department at somebody's university on somebody's former plantation in order to study Black music. We don't want that to be the thing that happens to hip hop. And I get that.
With the lack of understanding that you mentioned, that institutions can have, like, as an artist, you know, as all of us artists, you know, we love to have, you know, creative control over what we're talking about and over what we're trying to express. And it's kind of like, you know, as a Black man or as an African American or minority in any sort of space, we see this theme of, like, you know, artists in the past, like, I recently made a movie about it, like Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit, and how that kind of became an issue. And so I'm kind of wondering how it seems that, like, UVA, you know, really respects, like, what you're doing and gives you creative control. But is there any sort of, like, is there any time where fear kind of runs in your mind where it's like, if I say the wrong thing, I go from being seen as a pioneer to sort of becoming the villain in a sense, because they don't agree or understand where I'm trying to come from, or they don't want you to, I guess, plant seeds in the people's heads they don't want you to plant? Because that's some yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a risk. I mean, and so I feel like if everybody's 100 or 1,000% on board with it, it maybe is like not, you know, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing anyhow. You know, like it's not challenging in any way. I'm not challenging myself. But I mean, I will say with Sleepwalking too, that was, you know, like other folks, not anybody from, or not anybody like in any authority at UVA, but, you know, I had other colleagues who were like, after seeing the playlist, like, good luck with that. I remember one friend being like, it was good knowing you. And so, I mean, I understood it, but there was that risk there, but it wasn't something like, it wasn't a dean or somebody, or, you know, like one of my, you know, like one of the people who works in my department. No, none of those folks said anything. And if they had questions, they brought those questions to me. But I think that I'm not just trying to be provocative for the sake of being provocative. If a thing needs to be said and it needs to be said in a particular way, then I'm going to do that. Again, I'm stubborn enough to do that. But I don't know. I have to ask myself, sometimes I start writing a song and then I realize what I'm writing is not really what I was trying to get at. And there's nobody to tell me that but me. You know, I sit with it for a while and then I realize, okay, whatever feedback might come from this is not even really the conversation I'm trying to have. The conversation that I want to have is behind that, you know, like, so like I have to ask myself a better question, because the way that I've responded to the question here doesn't get me to the thing that I'm trying to get to. And so I think that that's like, just like a lot of reflection, but this is also why, you know, like certain versions of the songs from Owning My Masters exist in one version on SoundCloud, and they're up there. There are drafts of those songs from that album that are on SoundCloud. And then I wrote better versions of them later. So I kind of like leave the revision process open. So it's not like you just re-released an old song. Like, this is an updated draft of a song that has been in progress since, you know, 2014. And I wanted to leave that public because, again, I wanted there to be it's not accountability, but some kind of transparency with the people who were with me on that journey, listening to that music. And also, I don't have to worry about whether the song has been sold already, so to speak, because I'm not selling it anyhow. So you've got one version, that's a rough version of it. I feel differently about this now. And so this version that you have now, that I'm giving you right now, is the version that I feel okay with at this moment. And then that might be the version that goes out. And so, like, I think about not Good Morning America, but Maybe Metaphors Are Easier. There's a version of that existed when I was at Clemson. And then when I came here, I started working with Ryan McGuire. And you know, I just want to say peace to Ryan and Ryan's family. Rest in peace to him. But he was a great friend and collaborator. And we started working together. And the work that he did, the work that he was doing was so, it resonated so much with what I was thinking about. You know, he's like compressing, like, you know, trying to take the sound that remains whenever you compress a file into an MP3. And so, like, if you think about this idea of like someone making a decision about what you get to hear or what you can hear in order for like some kind of technological expediency. And my work is thinking about how like we might have to use different words in order to make people care about the fact that folks get murdered. And so like, I think that combining these ideas made that piece into a much better piece. It's a stronger piece because I'm able to think with someone who's kind of thinking through sound the way that I'm trying to communicate this with words. And so that was just like a really productive thing. So I don't think that the version from Owning My Masters and the version from Sleepwalking are the same thing. I think that they're two entirely different recordings. And so, you know, I don't feel bad for it existing in two different places like that. The more recent one, and also like I kind of have this artifact that demonstrates my thinking, this conversation that I was having with Ryan about that.
Could you talk more about the hip hop community specifically at UVA? Like what kind of organizations there are, how prominent it is? I'm curious as to how visible that faction on campuses would have or would make administrators more receptive to having something like a hip hop professor.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, I still, again, want to give a shout out to my colleagues in the music department because, you know, like they did all of the work to make that possible. You know, they did the work to make that possible before I got there. And I'm the person who's in the position that they, you know, that was created by their efforts. But so far as the student community goes, there are hip hop organizations that are, or there's at least one hip hop organization among the student body. And then there are students who I think like some are involved in that organization and then others not, who just are who work in the rap lab, which is, you know, kind of its own thing situated in the music department. And again, I don't see it as separate from what the students are doing, and you don't have to be a member of the rap lab in order to come and to work in there. But that's also, it's the place where I teach my classes, where I've taught my classes, you know, past couple of years. And that's the classroom that the composing mixtape class takes place. And those students are fairly close knit just because they come to that place together. And I think that like most of you have expressed, the students who make music here, the students who you know, who take pictures, the students who do graphic design, they all want community. They want to be able to be in a room with people who create all kinds of dope shit and are willing to give their time and energy toward making sure that other folks are feeling welcome to do that. And so those students, you know, like it fluctuates from semester to semester. I think, you know, as pandemic stuff is, you know, kind of made that more difficult. But again, like in a larger way, the music department provides community for students who do things other than the hip hop related stuff. And so there are multiple labs here. There are multiple labs here at Clemson where at UVA where people are where people have community to work on the kind of stuff that they want to make. And so there's lots of opportunity to create. I think that even like in Charlottesville, the hip hop community is you know, is here. It's robust. They have a festival every year that's really dope. I try to encourage my students to be a part of that and make sure that community members are welcome to come to the rap lab during the open hours that we have there, so that we're not trying to divide it between, you know, like folks who are in the music department, folks who are at the university, and folks who are in the community. I want the rap lab to be a community space where anybody who's interested in these things that we're interested in come together and they have access to these resources and to be able to work collaboratively in these ways that we do. And my hope is, I mean, that's a thing that has been going, you know, it's been going nicely for these past few years. But now, because of the, you know, like because of the protocols, the students, you know, folks have to sign up, you know, for hours at the lab individually, you know, to make sure that everything is all good. But it's still open, and you know, I get notifications whenever folks are signed up. But I don't even you know, I don't even pretend that I manage that calendar. It's not me who does that. So shout out to Travis Thatcher, who does all of the incredible work, not just in the rap lab, but in all of the labs in the music department. You know, it's just like the brain behind so much of the stuff that happens here.
I have a question about like how you find ways to connect you know, your research to like the stuff that you write about in your projects? Like, how does that connection get made? You know, I don't know if it's different every time. I don't know if you have a certain process, but does it just happen? Does it just like you learn all this stuff and you think of all these new things to research and then it shows up in your music, or is it like a little bit more, I don't know, specific than that?
Well, no, I mean, I have some questions that you know that I'm thinking about all the time. You know, like some of the questions about like, you know, what does it mean to, you know, like what are our bodies communicating to people? You know, that you know, like taking our voice from it and then presenting it as a digital file might change. And so, I mean, that's a question that kind of carries through all of the work. You know, like what, you know, what that means. But then I think about, I mean, sometimes it's something that happens in, you know, it's things that are happening in the world, and then other times it's just, you know, I'm reading and I'm inspired. So I wish it's not even really a linear process. That and I didn't know that I Used to Love to Dream was going to be that album because I didn't know what I was writing about. I didn't realize I felt these ways and that these ways that I was feeling were about home and about like identity until I was in South Africa previewing the songs at the National Arts Festival, and the feedback, you know, folks were saying what they felt the things that were in common with the pieces that I presented. And it's like, yeah, like I miss home, or I feel, I don't know, whatever it is, I feel this distance. And I was as far away from home, you know, as a person could be. And finally realizing that I was kind of writing about Decatur. And then you know, like what struck me about that was that, you know, like at the beginning of 2020 was when marijuana was legalized in Illinois, and Decatur decided that that they were not going to allow the sale of it in this place, even though there were provisions for the town to get, you know, like you know, to get, not just to get the dispensary, but like there would be folks would look out for this, like a place like Decatur that was disproportionately affected by the so-called war on drugs. But rather than saying, yes, like this is a way that this community can make money and like kind of make amends for this thing that has happened, the city council said no and missed out on all of that money that was being made. But like this town is also, you know, one of the fastest shrinking towns in the country. And not only that, but, you know, this guy who was the former sheriff, you know, who's Warren Buffett's son, has paid for there to be a police officer, you know, like what folks are calling like a vampire cop, a police officer who's going to do DUI enforcement for marijuana. So rather than like going toward what the law says, they're like swinging in the opposite direction. And so like that is the kind of thing that might influence making a song like Crack USA. So it's not just the thing that lives in the past, it's also what's happening right now. And then what the future might be, even as this so-called legalization has happened, we're further criminalizing this thing and doing the exact opposite of what, you know, folks are saying, well, don't, you know, like don't or obey the law or you know, just you know, be ingenuitive, you know, like be a capitalist or whatever. And a person wanting to do that in Decatur with regard to marijuana can't do that, is actually going to be further criminalized. So those were the things that I was thinking about while that was coming together. And then I found ways to like further highlight that by looking at that, you know, 1946, I think it's 1946 documentary, and then listening to how that sounds. And so it's trying to communicate these things that I'm really interested in with regard to Decatur in the present day, and the way that Decatur like was like sonically signified in the past. And then I think that might relate to all of these other conversations and across all kinds of other media that we might have, like the 1619 Project or Lovecraft Country or Watchmen. You know, like Decatur was surrounded by sundown towns. James Lowen, the guy who wrote the book Sundown Towns, is from Decatur, Illinois. So, you know, when the album was out, I threw the album, or I sent the album to him And so it's just like so many, and I actually even wrote something about this, so many questions that that I'm interested in that always find their ways like back into the work. And so it's just like, you know, it's a mix of things. And to like say that the album is about one thing is always like going to like not really get close to explaining. And so because I'm talking about the ideas and not even really talking about the music yet. You know, and what I was thinking there, like sonically, aesthetically, what's, you know, what I'm trying to get to.
I don't want to ask a question, but I do want to highlight that you taught me a new word on the album. I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly. Synesthesia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
My
it made
is more like a synesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I made me think about like how sensory your scholarship is.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to highlight, like, there's a lot of questions in the Q&A that talk about your process, that talk about like how. And I think you've done a really good job of explaining, like, it's not just one how, it's not linear, it's a lot of things going on, and the connections, being somewhere else and connecting it to somewhere else, that is really important here. So thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Are there like the questions? I don't have the questions from the Q&A. If
Jasmine, do you have the question from the Q&A?
Yeah, I can just start reading from the top, I guess. So Rachel, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. Rachel Egnar, does the panel have anything to say about the history of treating Black made music genres like blues, rock and roll, hip hop, etc. as quote devil or degenerate music, and then many of those genres being colonized and made popular? So I think they're just asking our opinions on the history of those musics, and then them getting colonized later. Do you guys on the panel have any comments on those?
Yeah, that's definitely a real thing. I was actually having a conversation with a friend about this literally like 2 days ago. He texted me, I can't believe MGK is popular. And I was like, MGK isn't popular. Like, what are you talking about? But then it turns out MGK flipped his hip hop career into an alternative career. So it brought up the conversation that a lot of people, even still now, like a lot of white artists, still use hip hop music as a jumpstart in their career to go do other things, or other things that they really want to do, but really don't respect the music itself, like when they're actually making it. I was even thinking about back in the early 2000s when Pink first came out. She was a straight up R&B artist, and people even thought she was Black, but then she flipped that into like a more alternative type of thing. So I definitely think it's a real thing. I don't know if there are any like solutions to actually fix that besides bringing awareness to it, because to be honest, I don't think the average person actually cares that that's a thing. But like somebody like me, I do care. And music is becoming a lot more, I guess, separated now, I guess more segregated, where there's so many people out there making things now that you can really hone in on what you like, what speaks to you, and what feels authentic or real to you. So I think really it just comes down to bringing awareness to it, and then like if you don't mess with it, just leave it alone, because I don't think it's going to stop happening, to be honest.
I think Kendrick Lamar said it best on XXX. He said, "America's reflection of me. That's what a mirror does." And I mean, speaks for itself. Like what he's talked with a lot of the stuff that people call degenerate in rap music is a product of just being an American and being in a society that has created you to be like that. And I feel like that's just something that a lot of people that say that are afraid to look at. I think people are afraid to hear what America is like from the people that live in the belly of the beast and aren't afraid to be unapologetically honest.
What's kind of funny is though, is like speaking on how people try to claim that blues back then was like the devil's music or trying to have that narrative on hip hop now. It's kind of crazy because it kind of parallels between like the war on drugs and how they look at music now, how they try to perceive it. Because it seems like when it's only something that's amongst the, minority community, like, Blacks, Hispanics, or something that we cultivated, it's going to be seen that way. But yet there's, we all know that, artists such as Elvis, stole, black men's songs and used them and made more money off of it. Even Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Chadwick Boseman's character, he was trying to get his song out there. And in the end, it was after he kind of, compromised himself. You saw that they ended up using that same song. So it was like, in a sense, I feel like it's more of like this power dynamic where if, the powers that be see that, as John said, people from the belly of the beast or people that aren't supposed to win in society make something that's powerful and that they know will grab people's attention. It's more so like, we're going to play it off like this is something that's bad, but we know the power of it. So we're going to take that power from y'all and we're going to run with it and expand it. And that's, I feel like in a way, that's how we kind of lose that power, because you compare it to the war on drugs. Initially, if you did drugs, you were criminalized. But once it got expanded to, communities like predominantly white communities, it became more of a conversation of therapy and rehab. And so it's kind of like, I feel like there's really no real solution to that, because in a way, it's just bittersweet. If it doesn't expand, then people won't know. But then if it does expand, people would know, but its roots will kind of be lost in the midst of it all, I feel.
I say something real quick. I think it's worth noting, especially when we think of Black music in the academy. It took about 50 years for a lot of music programs to really even consider talking about it, engaging with jazz music. It wasn't until the 1970s you started to see that. And here we are, depending on how you want to look at the history of hip hop, right? Like approximately 50 years after a lot of what folks say are the origin of this music. It's just now people are acting like, oh, wow, hip hop in the academy, so history repeats itself. And to take it back to the Mysterious Vibe song we were talking about, and we showed that makings of video, the Blackbirds started off, the way I understand it, as a group of college students that worked with the legendary Donald Byrd, jazz trumpet player that taught at, I believe, Howard in North Carolina Central later on. But yeah, they started as a group of college students working under Donald Byrd. And it's just interesting to see that sample get flipped all these years later in kind of similar circumstances, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's also it's interesting and important to think about the like some of the conversations about like folks who have the ability to say, what is and what isn't valid. I don't know. It poses all kinds of, I don't know. It is. Yeah, I want to think about that before I say it out loud. That's cool. I'll come back to that.
All right, we can move on to the next question. This was did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I think that let's see, it looks like Demetrius Nobles, he had this question about challenging students to take up serious political questions. That was from a long time. I mean, I guess they're all from a long time ago. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I can definitely read that one off. So it says, Dr. Carson, how do you challenge your students to take up some of the serious political questions in their music that you task yourself to address with your music? What have been some of the unique trials and triumphs of pushing your students to imbue rap music with a kind of political intentionality?
Yeah, like I think that, well, I actually tell them that there is no music without intention anyhow. I mean, I guess like it does exist, but there are always these questions that that people are going to use music, or they're going to see music as making some kinds of arguments. And because they are going to get that from it, how how intentional will you be to make sure that what you want to communicate is what's being communicated? And so it's not like I tell them what political issues to take up, but we have the conversation so that whenever they say, well, I don't know what to write about, or I don't know what I might be able to offer a perspective on, we're also doing exercises where I'm literally asking them to write about where they're from, and to write about where they want to go, and to write about where they grew up. And so like they might have these verses, or they might have these exercises, and then they're having conversations with one another. And then like ultimately they have to collaborate with another person. That's one of the requirements that I have for them, is that they work with another person in class at least once. And those collaborations then create a conversation, and often those conversations end up taking up some of these political questions. And sometimes it gets really tense, and then sometimes like folks think they think that they are that they've done it, and then the feedback from the larger group is this ain't it, and we need to do something else, or we need to think more critically about it, because there are going to be 15 people's name on this playlist, and you two or you three having this conversation in this way is going to reflect something that like as a collective we want to have a little more conversation about before we before this goes to its final version. And they've been especially receptive to that kind of feedback. I think that some of the there are other challenges, like like access to equipment, or being on a computer where somebody might be able to delete your session, and having that kind of thing happen has been that's been a challenge sometimes, but never really. I mean, I guess at the beginning of every semester there is like it's this moment where we have to have the conversation about the so-called N-word, and I try to make sure that that's something that I address before it even comes up in conversation among the students, and that is how, like, what are our relationships to language, and what does it mean to be intentional when we are presenting ourselves in language. And so that hasn't usually been an issue, but very often I think that I guess if there's a challenge, sometimes the students want to, like, it's like they want to solve the issue before they write anything about it. And of course, some of these things aren't solvable. It's like, well, we're gonna do a song about being at the University of Virginia, but we want the song to solve our being at the University of Virginia. Once we said this, then there will be no more problems with this place existing the way that it does. And that's just not that's just not the way the world works. But I foresee more challenges, coming up later on, because it's different every semester. And also there are, like as the Ralph Northam blackface controversy stuff was going on here, the challenge for me is like, well, let's not pretend that UVA is not UVA while we're talking about this. And, they took that, and I think that they moved, I mean, they have content on the album that kind of takes that on, again, not trying to solve it, but at least trying to address it, and in ways that means that they don't have to be an expert, but they do have an opinion, and they want to weigh in.
Another great question in the Q&A is, what do we need to do to change the trend of academic scholarship that so exclusively privileges written text filtered through sanctioned academic processes? So essentially, what do we need to do so it's not just writing that is recognized as scholarship?
Oh, is that for me? I think some of the things that are going on now, I mean, I've seen all kinds of really interesting projects. I know that the University of Michigan Press, they published, they also, it's like someone had a peer-reviewed published podcast. There are, people who do documentaries. I've seen people's dissertation projects that are music or podcasts, or it was one person, I think, at the University of Wisconsin whose dissertation project was like a gallery showing. It was like this kind of like this art installation thing. And so I think that people are pushing forward with all of the different kinds of things. And, we have to challenge our institutions to be receptive to the kind of work we want to do. And I mean, that means that you have to take a chance because, as much as I've moved in, or the moves that I find myself, or I found myself making with the work that I do, I've always understood that there's somebody who, even if I believe my work is good, they have the authority to say no. They can say, this is not legitimate, this is not real, you do not pass, or you do not get this job, or you do not get this grant. All of those things are real. And so I work with that in mind. And I try to work with that and against it. So, how do I do the things that I'm being asked for, but still make work with the kind of integrity that I need for it to have, to put my name on it and to say, this is what I want to be doing. And so that's the work. That's what we have to do. We have to issue those challenges. It's our education. It's our teaching. It's our learning. So, I think some of that is up to us to challenge the institutions where we are. That's the work.
A question that kind of going off that, and I'm curious for the other members of the panel as well. How important is it for you guys' work to be well received outside of academia? I guess continuing that question, it says, how do you negotiate the writing process with these two seemingly very different target audiences? So I think it's an interesting question as far as like you said, putting out information that you want, but also being recognized by the academy and having the space to put out work that you want to. How do you guys feel about, I guess, those two challenging ideas?
I think it's as AD has been, pretty much saying the whole time. I think it's just mainly being intentional with what you're saying. Like if you're going to create a project or write a song, whether it's for academics or for just, people in general, I think as long as you know that you're intentional with what you're saying as an artist, and you know that what you're trying to express is being expressed the way that you want it to be expressed and the way that you feel that is best expressed, then I feel like it's just one of those things you have to just put it out there and kind of just see what happens in a sense. As AD said, if something has to be said a certain way, it just needs to be said a certain way. So going into it, I don't think there should be no thought process of like, this has to fit academia or what other people think. You have to make it more so like how you believe this needs to be said, and just people take it however they take it.
I think that's why community is so important too. Sometimes you just want to be able to play it for somebody and be like, well, what do you feel about this? And if it hits for like that certain few people, then you're like, okay, I know that it does at least the thing that I need it to do. And so like sometimes, and there are people who are half of that where, like I'll just send a scratch verse, or, or people who call me, it's like, well, here's what I'm thinking of doing. And so that's that kind of, that informal process that you might have with people where you run it by them before you give it to anybody else. And as long as they get it, then it doesn't matter what these other people don't get, because you know that it's potent in the way that you need it to be potent. And so it's challenging. It can be frustrating. I don't want to pretend that it's all good just because you might have that, but it's really important to have community that you can engage with, so that you can say, well, I know that this might be, it might be a little opaque, but it's intentionally so. And I want people to be challenged in certain ways to get it. And so my question to that person might be, how do I present this in such a way that it's still challenging, but it might also be received or engaged, so that I don't drop it and it's just like a brick that, like sort of, goes straight to the bottom.
You guys both had some very good answers. I think it's important, like DeRay and AD were talking about, being intentional with your work and knowing with that small community or large community that you create for yourself, as long as you have a couple of those people that you really value their opinion and they understand what you're trying to say, then you can be confident in the work that you put out. Yeah. Do anybody else on the panel want to look at some of the questions and pick out one that you guys would like to answer? There's a lot of great questions.
I think this is a good one. This is by Erin Myers Brooks. She says, a question for everyone. I am very much interested in giving students concrete skills to make their own hip hop. What sort of specific classes, skills would you emphasize in an undergrad curriculum?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
She says, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I am very much interested in giving students concrete skills to make their own hip hop. What sort of specific classes, skills would you emphasize in an undergrad curriculum?
Okay. I'd say that, you know, like beat making, you know, like an introduction to digital audio workstations. Like most students can benefit from that. Some engineering, you know, like writing raps or like listening to raps, you know, something of that. We have a class here called writing rap, but there are classes offered here on computer music, you know, and I think that they have like these introductory classes where folks can just kind of learn how to make what they want to make. And just like proficiency, like knowing your way around the workstation is probably the students who come into the lab and want to learn. Most of the time, the thing that's intimidating to them is getting in front of the workstation and making something. Like they have all kinds of ideas of what they want to do, but they're intimidated by like, well, what's the first thing, or what is the best thing, or what's the professional thing? And most people who make beats or who record know that there are any number of ways that you might approach this. So classes where students have that kind of freedom to explore and just like feel comfortable doing different things are really important for, especially for making beats and recording. And then like, you know, writing rap, I think is, you know, part of like, it's the composing, it's the reading, and it's the listening. And I don't know which of those is like, you know, like the more important, but I think all of those go together. But I'm certain that you all probably have ideas as well.
Yeah, I would say to add on to that, classes on things like sound design. Sound design to me is kind of the best way to make your music stand out, because everybody kind of uses the same DAWs or the same presets. And if you can actually use these synthesizers to make your own stuff, that can really just create your own sound and make your music sound like your own. On top of that, classes on mixing or the elements that go into mixing, like EQing or compression, that make your music sound better at that last stage, could really help people just to get their music sounding like really polished when it comes out.
I think a cool, I wouldn't say like, yeah, I think a cool class would just be like, you know, project, like learning how to create a project, like everything that comes with that, you know, like learning how to sequence, learning how to, you know, choose an intro, or learning how, you know, I don't know, just learning how to make a concept work together within rap. And like, I think, you know, that's definitely an art that kind of seems a bit lost in mainstream rap sometimes, but that's always going to be valuable to rap. So
I'll just hop on something real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, DeRay. I think like intertextuality of sources is super important when you're talking about hip hop. And I'm not just saying that as a DJ, but just in general. Like one thing I really like doing is kind of like tracing samples throughout time, you know? And I think that's something that's not really immediately apparent to even a lot of really heavy fans of hip hop music.
That would be a dope class just on a bibliography of rap through samples.
Once we're past the Rona, man, I'm ready to make that trip down 64. Let's do it.
Word, let's do it.
I think also having like a class that could kind of go outside of like the sound of hip hop, as well as just like, I don't know, like I think I watched a YouTube video about 80s class, so I feel like they already do some of this, but kind of like just, you know, studying like rappers, you know, lyrics, and also watching films that are inspired by hip hop as well, just kind of like understanding the overall aesthetic of what hip hop was back then and what it is now, as far as, you know, watching older films that were like in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and kind of watching the progression and allowing people to, you know, take those sounds or those lyrics and come up with their own opinion or their own thing, depending on what their goal is.
That would be another dope class, just hip hop films over time.
I don't have a suggestion for a specific course, but as all of us have mentioned, I think it's one important component of these proposed classes is the sense of community and really like getting to know your peers, valuing their opinions, and working together as a community to create and learn through each of these courses.
There's looks like there's a question here that says, given how uncommon it is for hip hop to be a part of a traditional music degree, how would you advise music major students? The question moved. I don't know what happened to it now. Oh, yeah. How would you advise music major students who are uncertain about career paths or who might have equal interest in traditional music composition, graduate programs, or hip hop in the music industry? I think that I think that the advice that I would give, or that I have given, is that, you know, in order to do the music that I make doesn't have to be in the academy. You know, like it's not a prerequisite that it exists here. And so I try to continue to do what I do. I would suggest someone who's a graduate student to find the community that is doing that is not reliant upon the university. And that exists in a whole lot of places, which means that you can find that community and still have the, you know, like the traditional curriculum that you have at the university, and also encourage that conversation between the local music community and the music community at your university. And that's, I think, the suggestion that I would give to anybody who's here, which a lot of our graduate students do that already. They have community with people who make music who are here and with each other. But I would encourage more of that if it's possible to have more of that. And so, and whatever you can do at the university to help, but also, you know, try to push your programs to hire folks to be able to offer classes that that do the kind of thing that you want hip hop wise, music industry wise at the university. So it's not pushed off onto the students to have to go and get that, you know, sort of not only is just a la carte, but they also have to go outside of the university to get it.
I see a question that says, I wonder if any of the panelists might be interested to expand on their use of music within rap, by which I mean that whilst lyrics words are of absolute importance, there were some brief mentions of the interplay between the lyrics and the music production, and I wondered how the musical elements are also used to speak the meaning. All right, so as a producer, I can speak to this some, because when I'm creating a beat, often what I'm trying to do within it is create moments, right? Because ultimately you want your song to be interesting. So it's not just pulling out a sample and just putting some drums on it and letting that bounce for like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's actually taking the time to listen to the sample and find like places where you can like switch up or maybe add a chorus here, or maybe add a bridge here or something like that. Because I guess one of the things they use a lot in electronic music is a drop, right? So like at the beginning of every like electronic song, you have that build up, it gets louder, louder, and then you have that big bass drop. So it's kind of just keeping things like that in mind when you're making a beat to make it interesting, because a lot of times that can make it speak to a rapper that might want to use it even more. And even like if you said, you mentioned the fact that lyrics and words are important, but within lyrics and words, there's also things that rappers do musically, like rhythmically, to make their stuff more interesting, right? Like flow is to me, is an under talked, or not an aspect of rapping that's not talked about as much as it should be. People usually always focus on the lyrics, but flow and like switching up your flow and keeping what you're doing interesting is very important. So rappers definitely do this along with the producers. So yeah, it's just, to me, it's like just a lot of keeping difference throughout the song or making a lot of changes to make it sound interesting?
As Evan said, like the way as a rapper, I like to think of making like songs kind of like a movie. So if I'm trying to talk about a certain situation or a certain feeling, as Evan said, like the moments that he creates within his beats when I rap over them can really like set the scene. Because the same way when we watch movies, like, you know, the soundtrack really affects your mood as you're watching the movie, especially scary ones. And so it's in the same way, like in those moments Evan creates as the artist, I'm trying to focus on not only like flowing right, but also focusing on the delivery of how I'm saying it. Because like a lot of times it's not what you say, it's just how you say it. And once people feel that emotion from what you're saying and you mix that in with the moments that the producer creates, I feel like that's when something magical can really be made.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet, but I always just feel like, you know, the rapper's responsibility is to just put what's being said in the instrumental in like actual language. And that just means a whole bunch of things, because sometimes, you know, I just feel like we're just like, rappers are just like translators. Like, you know, these beats say something and you gotta be able to translate it to people that can't really translate it, you know. And I think that's what it comes down to, in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to say before all this time gets by that I appreciate Evan, Jonathan, Jasmine, and DeRay, and your answers and just insight and wisdom and the work that you all are doing. I think that you all are inspirational to all of the students and faculty and staff and other folks who have been on this call listening to you and, you know, just like inspired by the work that you all are doing. So keep doing that work. And please keep pushing forward. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to get down there or over there, however geography works. Again, you know, so we can all be in the same space, you know, and have this conversation, and then and maybe cipher afterward, you know, and then make sure Freddy, you know, kicks in some bars, because that's always necessary, and maybe invite Eric too. So I just wanted to make sure that got said before 5 o'clock.
AD, you a wild dude, bro.
Yeah, so thank y'all.
Eric, I think you don't gotta wait till the 5 p.m. mark. I'm gonna pass it to you right now, bro.
All right. We're here. What can I say? This has just been such an amazing conversation. AD, Professor Carson, I just want to say thank you. If I could say it in all caps, I would, because you've just given us so much to think about. This has been such incredible, such a beautiful conversation. I also want to say a shout out to the audience, because such incredible questions. I want to express regrets that we couldn't answer all of them, because there are so many great ideas in those questions, and we're going to save them and we will think about them. I want to thank SOPA for the sponsorship of this event, and for my colleagues who've come to be here as attendees. Thank you so much. There's been a lot of support at SOPA behind the scenes for this, and there's real enthusiasm about the work that's happening here. I want to thank everybody in Digging in the Crates, both for your incredible side of this conversation, and also for the things that you were doing behind the scenes. And I'll also say, you know, this is a great conversation, because it's obviously not the end of the conversation. It's the beginning of so many other conversations, which I really hope that we're going to have. I'm sure we're going to have them. And then the other side of that is not just having those conversations, but talking about what are we going to do as a result of what we've learned. And we have a lot of ideas where I really want to see those ideas come to fruition as real things, because what you're doing, all of you, just inspires me as a musician, as a creative artist, as a thinker, as a member of the Academy who would like to see the Academy be a force for good. and be a space where things can happen that then can go out to other sectors of society in a positive way. And 100% of this experience here has been, I think, outlining where that could be. So again, right on the dot, thank you to everybody. This has been an incredible experience for me. And I would just ask before we close, is there anybody on the panel who would want to say anything final before we wrap up?
Thank y'all. Peace.
Rappers have impeccable timing. We're going to end on time.
Absolutely. This is it for now, but we're going to be back soon with more. And so again, I can't thank anybody enough. At this point, everybody, thank you. This constitutes the end of our session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.